Greetings. This is Principal Kafele, and I'm excited today. I'm excited about the recent release of my newest book, my 12th book, my 8th ASCD book, entitled The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. Once again, The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. I'm making this video because I want to talk to you about why I wrote this book. You know, of 12 books, when I think about the preceding 11 books, I wrote them because I wanted to write them. I wrote them because I just saw a need and I wanted to fill it. And I wrote the books, whether it be my leadership books, my classroom teacher books, my parenting books, my books for young people from way back when. But I wrote them because I felt that I wanted to write them. There was a need to write them. This one had a different motivation. This is the first book that I felt I have to write. Like I have no choice. I have no options. I have to write this book. Meaning that in the wake of the murders of both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the aftermath in the education space, just the volume of teachers, educators at all levels, that were reaching out to me, asking me for recommendations of what to read toward understanding the outrage across America, across the world, in terms of just reaction and response to what was happening in the lives of Black people across the country, but particularly George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I said, I got to write this book because I'm recommending books. But I knew specifically what I wanted leaders and teachers to read around the question of equity, around the question of social justice education. So with equity, here I'm really looking at three, I call them my three pillars of equity, my three pillars of equity mindset, teaching and leading. Number one, student individuality. Whether or not that student is visible or invisible in that classroom. That student is unique. That student is someone special. That student is someone worthy of individual attention. So student individuality, meaning there's no two people that are the same. That youngster is unique unto himself, unto herself, and are those needs of his or her uniqueness being met. Number two, student cultural identity. In other words, that student has a cultural, racial, ethnic identity. Is it being denied, suppressed, or accentuated or celebrated? I want to make sure that that student cultural identity is being accentuated in that classroom to the point that not only is learning relevant for the student in question, but it's relevant for students who are not those students of color, but yet need to be conversant in whatever it is we're talking about, whether it be in math, science, language, or social studies, interdisciplinary, but relevance to the youngsters who are in the classroom. The lesson, the books that are used, the curriculum, everything about it. Youngsters seeing self in the learning. And then number three, the third pillar is student voice. Voice with quotation marks around it, meaning on the one hand, the ability, the welcoming of that student to express oneself in the classroom. That student has his or her own unique opinions, ideas, thoughts, beliefs, perspectives, points of view on whatever. But on the other hand, the ability or the vehicle to find oneself in that classroom. So now youngsters in a classroom where there's a vehicle in place for me to find my essence, who I am inside, as opposed to I'm just a student that's receiving information, is participating in learning, etc. But I'm divorced from it in terms of my own growth relative to finding my true identity and what I will evolve into life after school. So after the schooling process at the K-12 level. So again, student individuality, student cultural identity, and student voice. But then on the social justice side, I find myself always reminding teachers, educators, that there is no line of demarcation that we can draw between life outside of school and life inside of school. Life outside of school is the life of the youngster. But when youngster walks into the school, into the classroom, it's still the life of the youngster. So I'm saying here, my contention here is that youngster doesn't check the life that shaped them, that shaped her at the front entrance. And now I walk into the building. No, that youngster's bringing all of those experiences, realities, challenges, obstacles, needs, interests, goals, aspirations. Youngsters bringing all of that into the classroom. So that world outside that shaped youngster is walking inside into a classroom that is just an extension of the youngster's life. So we don't separate necessarily life outside of school from life within school. That social dynamic is one and the same. It's just that at this point of this juncture of the day, the youngster is in a classroom. But in terms of who that youngster is, there's no separation. This is just a component. Later on in the day, youngster will be in a different phase, a different place, but it'll still be his or her life, right? So that social dynamic is who that youngster is. So that social justice component, I don't want that to get lost in a classroom because it's part of the youngster's navigation of the world, understanding and interacting with the world upon which that youngster exists or the world that produced that youngster. It has a place in a classroom, interdisciplinary. Math, science, language arts, social studies, CTE, PE, health, and all other classes and courses that a school offers. But in terms of bringing it all together toward implementation, that's what this is about. The Equity and Social Justice Education 50. 50 self-reflective questions for the educator to read, look within oneself, process and digest the commentary that accompanies the questions while determining how do I take the content and infuse it into my practice at the classroom level the next day, tomorrow, as opposed to something abstract. This is what things should be. No, I want to give you strategy and solution. What can we do differently as a team tomorrow toward ensuring that young people are successful? And then lastly, you'll notice the subtitle, Critical Questions for Improving Opportunities and Outcomes for Black Students. I was very specific with this one. I wrestled with it. Do I want to write this book as a generic book that addresses all groups of children? But then I thought about the motivation for writing the book in the first place. Once again, the aftermath of the murders of both George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I said, I got to speak to the needs of Black children on this one. I can't write a generic book. I got to write a book that has extreme specificity. The educator of Black children. So if you've got just one Black child in your school, I wrote this book for you. So whether it be one Black child or an entire Black school, doesn't matter, and everything in between, I wrote this for you. Because when we talk about the achievement gap, and historically, Black children being on the extreme wrong end of that gap, when it doesn't have to be, because the children are extraordinary, they're phenomenal, they're amazing, they're brilliant, they're intelligent. They shouldn't be on that wrong end of this gap. So I said, I gotta address that here. When we talk about suspension data, the disproportionality of Black student suspensions across the country, I gotta address that here. When we talk about the disproportionality of special needs referrals and special needs placement, gotta talk about it here. Talk about the disproportionality of juvenile incarceration, gotta talk about it here. The disproportionality of Black incarceration beyond juvenile, and all the other challenges to being Black in America as it trickles down to Black children in the classroom. I wrote this book because I want teachers and leaders to be proficient in working with Black children across America. So the Equity and Social Justice Education 50, available at principalkafele.com, or you can go to amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, or the publisher, ascd.org. Principal Kafele will link you to, principalkafele.com will link you to ascd.com, no, ascd.org, or amazon.com. But as soon as you finish watching this video, if you don't have the book already, go ahead and order. And you can thank me later. I think that this book will be beneficial for you and for every black student in your school. I thank you for listening.